Hi, I'm Hasara Nwangi. Now, we all buy stuff from different vendors for different purposes, right? Business entities are the same. They also need goods and services because they cannot fulfill everything on their own. So, this procurement function is not simple as it is for an individual. So, to talk about this procurement function, we have a very experienced personnel with us. He is Mr. Tilak Rahulan, Head of Supply Chain Management at Dialog Axiata. Hello, Mr. Tilak.
Hi, Hasara.
Now, you have led Sri Lanka's number one corporate, Dialog Axiata, in supply chain management. So, how do you see all these functions?
The function supply chain and procurement is considered quite new to all industries. Now, what I see is in today's business world, a lot of leaders they focus on business units, finance, marketing, HR. Likewise, the concept of supply chain and procurement was introduced about 20 years back. Even if you think about a parent who would be encouraging their kids to go to school and become, they would be saying, you can become a doctor, you can become an engineer, or you can become an accountant. But very few parents would say, can't you become an SCM or a procurement professional? So likewise, this function is quite new to all industries, but in today's business world, it has become a very important function because of quite few reasons. One, as you correctly said previously, like individuals, even organizations are involved in procurement functions, purchasing. But when an organization is doing a purchase, there are certain criteria and points that they need to consider. So, how can an organization consider the correct criteria and bring in the best valued product or the service to the organization is a key. So, from that perspective, in today's business world, the function procurement and supply chain has become a very key element of the entire organization. What I see is in today's business world, some organizations they are struggling to really understand what the supply chain function means. From a definition point of view, what I see, a supply chain starts from an idea in a boardroom where the management of the organization discuss about new idea and it ends with the customer. So the entire journey of that idea being converted into a product or a service being delivered to the end customer, the entire journey is supply chain. So in businesses, managing this function is very important. We all know that customer is the king. We all talk about customers king, they are being always right. So how can an organization properly provide the product and the service that they desire? And if we do not do that, then definitely the customer will be dissatisfied, and from an organization point of view, they would lose the customer. So working backwards, this entire value chain or the supply chain, managing this is an important concept for an organization.
Right. So, Diriya.lk is catering to stakeholders of micro, small, and medium enterprises. But when compared to Dialog Axiata, it's a large corporate, so this is very different. So, how would you see these differences?
From a framework perspective, I seriously don't see any difference. Because what I see is which organization, considering the size or even industry, the principles are the same. There are clear processes and procedures that an organization should establish, irrespective of their size. So, if you take a very small and a medium scale organization, let's see how they're going to start the procurement function. They need to understand what items or services that they need to procure and how frequently. Based on that, they need to develop their procurement processes and systems. Some small organizations might not be able to come up with large scale ERP systems because of their cost pressure, but they need to have some sort of controls. Now, what I see in a lot of industries, when people talk about procurement, the first thing that comes to their mind is price. So, some professionals in many industries think that the procurement people in these organizations, their duty is talking to suppliers, negotiating and bringing the price down. That is a wrong concept or a wrong understanding. Procurement is all about identifying what is needed by that organization and then looking out in the market what are the options that would cater this need, looking at alternative options that could be used as substitutes, then making a decision what sort of a product or a service that would really need. Based on that, they need to understand who are the potential suppliers, vendors who can come and provide these products or services. Doing your background study is very much important on these suppliers. And then planning, having discussions, negotiating prices, and of course, not only prices, that product should cater the end requirement. So, procurement is always a team game. A procurement function, they cannot operate solely. They need to work with all the divisions in a respective organizations, and it's a collective decision altogether. So, end of the day, the procurement function will ensure after looking at all these options in the market that they will bring in the best valued product or service to the organization. So, it could be from a requirement perspective, from a price perspective, from a warranty perspective and from a sustainability perspective. So, what I just explained could be established or practiced in any organization irrespective of their size. What has happened recently with the technology development, a lot of automation has come into this entire procurement process. So, large organizations might invest in these technologies and they can implement the ERP systems or sourcing platforms. But small scale organizations, they do not have to do it right now, but they can have a manual system, but the transparency, governance and the end objective would be always the same.
Right. So you mentioned about, rights and wrongs. So let's talk a bit about, applicable laws and regulations. And what are the standards for procuring activities?
Well, there are no specific laws for procurement per se. So, the general country's law will be applicable. But what we need to understand is when you are doing a procurement, it's a very financial transaction. So, everything needs to be very transparent and everything needs to be documented properly. For an example, if an organization is going to purchase something from a supplier for a 3-year period on a frequent basis, then after having the discussions, after agreeing on terms and conditions, these things should be properly documented in a proper legal contract. Because what I see in today's business world, some organizations, they after having an agreement, they don't have a proper contract. Sometimes contract is available, but all agreed terms are not included. So, down the line when there are some issues, then people would starting pointing finger at each other. They would say at discussion stages, we discuss, you agreed, why are not coming and adhering right now. So, basic principle, whatever you discuss, draft it in a contract, both parties should agree and should be signed by respective authorities.
Right. So now that you talked about this documentation and drafting contracts, so let's also talk a bit about regular practices in managing and controlling procurement activities.
So, there are so many practices that a procurement function would be practicing within an organization. So, the main function would be they would be directly controlling the main capital expenditure and the operation expenditure of an organization, what we call it as capex and opex. So, usually what we see is a procurement function would be controlling close to 80 to 90% of a company's expenditure. Also, what we see is as good practices, talking about the processes of a procurement function, well, what happens is the procurement function will get involved with the business units beginning of the year to understand what sort of requirements they have throughout the year. Based on that, the procurement function would come up with a procurement plan, and then based on the requirements, there would be a tendering process. So there are documents such as RFPs, requests for quotations. So the procurement function would contact with the potential vendors, get their respective proposals from a technical perspective as well as from a commercial perspective, and there will be joint evaluations by the technical or the user division